Welcome to week 2 of Fitted for this season. This week, we're going to plan like Noah. We're going to discuss goal setting. And our scripture for this week is Genesis 6 through 9. And again, I would like you to read it on your own and not just take my word for it. In Genesis 6 through 9, it talks about a little bit about the life of Noah. This is a man in the Old Testament that is discussed. And during that time in the world, everyone was consistently evil and wicked, consistently doing some of everything in thought and in deed. And Noah was one of the only men that God identified as righteous at that time, even calls him blameless, and said he had a close fellowship with God. So we see God giving Noah direct instructions for a task, for a goal he wanted him to accomplish. And we go back and read and look at the Old Testament and the New Testament and look at all the Bible. And what we get from it, we can see a lot of God's character traits. And this is what builds our trust and our love for him. And we can go back and read his word and see how he's related to others and just who he is. And it also shows us some character traits that were beneficial for the people of God at that time and are beneficial for us to have as well in our relationship and walk with God. And we're going to discuss a few of those traits that Noah displayed when we read Genesis 6 through 9. So, one of those is Noah was obedient. So, God ended up giving him commands, a task, a goal to accomplish, which was to build an ark. And so imagine God giving you something or giving you this task to do that nobody else has done in your family, amongst your friend group, in your community, in the world at that time, and still has not been given this direction from God and to do this. So imagine if God gives you something like that. And we see that on a small scale in our lives every day. Sometimes when it comes to our health and wellness journey, maybe your goal or something you want to accomplish for yourself is something that you've never seen done in your family before. Whether it's run a 5K, or maybe it's everyone struggles with diabetes, or everybody gets high cholesterol, or everyone is overweight. This is just who we are. And you have decided to do something different, do something that maybe hasn't been seen in the community or in the space that you're in. But his obedience, when we look at Noah's obedience, we could take a lot from that and say, hey, despite what everybody else has going on, as for me and my house, we're going to serve God and we're going to be obedient to him. Another character trait that we see from Noah is consistency. He was consistent. Imagine in that day, I can just bet that he's building this ark and he's waiting for the Lord is going to flood the earth, and it's probably not a drop of rain anywhere to be seen. But yet he consistently has to get up every day and put work on this ark, put work on something that he is not seeing the end result of yet, that he was promised would come. And that's how it is a lot of times in our health and wellness journey. Maybe our goal is to lose weight. So you're consistently putting in that work day in and day out. You're meal prepping, you're eating the food, you're moving your body, you're doing all of the things. And yet you're not seeing the end goal yet. You're not seeing the big finish line that you're looking for. We have to celebrate the consistency. We have to celebrate the behavior changes, even those small wins and things that aren't really small, because changing your behavior and being consistent with something different can be really challenging. So we have to celebrate that even before we see the first 2 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, what have you. We have to celebrate that you're now living completely different and being consistent in a way that you've never been before. And the last character trait that I'm going to talk about that we see in Noah is that he was patient. Boy, do we need patience on this journey that we're going on. So we need patience in a variety of ways. But let's talk about Noah back up. Noah was patient in that he was waiting for what God has said to actually come to fruition. So he had to be patient with probably those around him. He had to be patient with his family. His family were some of the only ones to go on the boat with him, but they probably still were like, "What were you doing? What's going on?" He had to be patient with himself. He had to be patient in his relationship with God. And we have to be patient as we walk out and goal set and try to reach these goals. We have to be patient with ourselves. We have to be patient with our bodies. We didn't arrive in whatever condition we are in now. We didn't arrive there yesterday. Our bodies are a reflection of what we've been doing for quite some time, months, years. So we have to be patient. We can't expect everything to be overhauled and changed just overnight. So again, obedience, consistency, and patience. Those are some character traits that we could really benefit from in our walk. So, one additional thing I want to add, I know last week we talked about, our fruits and our veggies and incorporating that into our diet. And now we see God reveals another little piece of, I would say, his meal plan. So when we take a look at it's Genesis 9:3, and it says, "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs, excuse me." So many people may choose to be vegan or vegetarian, and that's okay. That's not outside of God's will. And then there's people that will choose to be meat eaters, and that's not outside of God's will at all. Here we have him saying that it's all good. What I always say is to choose and select things closest to the source as possible, which means the least amount of things man has had their hand in putting that food on your plate, the least amount of processing, the least amount of packaging, the least amount of chemicals. We don't want any chemicals, but the least amount of all these things in our food is what's best. So now I have some tips when it does come to adding meat, poultry, all of the things into our diet. Our first tip: where it's from matters. So no matter whether you're eating meat, poultry, seafood, where it's sourced from matters. You want to look into what goes into the processing or packaging of those things that you're eating, and you want to see what that process, what effect, what things have been added, or how that animal was treated, what effect that could have on your body, and then choose and select from there. My second tip is variety is the spice of life. So, whether you're choosing, like I said, beef, lamb, pork, turkey, chicken, seafood, plant based options, there is a variety of sources of protein out there, the macronutrient protein. So, you don't have to choose just one. You can have a variety. They all have different macronutrients when it comes to fat levels and protein levels per ounce or size of it, and also even carbs when we get to some of our plant-based options. But shake it up. Maybe you want to do, a lot of people have incorporated like a meatless Monday when they're meat eaters. So just variety is good. So my final tip is to weigh it out. So I know people do not want to be attached to the scale. The food scale is what I mean, not the body scale, but the food scale, weighing food and things like that. Some people are fine with it, and some people, they have zero interest in doing that. But what I do suggest to someone that's starting, this is their first time starting a meal plan, first time trying to eat a certain kind of way and watch their portion size, what I do advise is that you measure things out for at least a week. Use whatever same plates and things that you have, weigh things out, portion them out, take a picture of it and keep it on your phone. So that way you have a visual reference if you need it every now and then to look and say, okay, does this look like 4 ounces of this? Does this look like about a cup of this? And that way that can kind of be a visual reminder, because over time, when you don't measure things, it can kind of get away from us. 2 tablespoons of salad dressing may start to look like a fourth of a cup or a third of a cup. Same when it comes to cheese or nuts and things like that that can start to add up quickly. So at least weigh things for about a week. Get yourself your eyes visually in tune to what that looks like, and that will be a great help and time saver. Okay, now it's time to write it out. I have some few things that I want us to work on. So go ahead and get a pen and paper and we'll get started. First, I would like you to describe a time where your character prevented your progression towards a certain goal. Now, I want you to reflect on one of your greatest accomplishments. Take a moment to do that. And now I want you to describe what was your mindset at that time. What character traits did you have that you feel aided to your success in accomplishing that goal? Now that we've taken the time to look at some things that we have to look out for and some character traits that we definitely want to, some strengths that we have, we want to continue to develop, we want to take all of that into making our goals smart. And what I mean by smart is, I'm not going to let this word beat me up, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. We want to test the goals that we have against those things. We want to make sure that our goals are precise, that they're detailed, that they're not broad or vague. We want to make sure that they're measurable so that we can have a way to identify progress and know that we're moving in the right direction. We want to make sure our goals are attainable. Is this something we'll even be able to achieve? Is it realistic? And then relevant. When it comes to relevant, when it comes to our health and wellness goals, is this something that's aligned with my values? Is this important for my life and my purpose? What's my why behind that? And is that relevant? And then we want to look at time bound. So we want to take a look at, is this achievable in whatever amount of time? Is there an amount of time that we can put towards this goal? We don't want to leave it where it's something that we don't put a type of timeline on, because sometimes that can make us stagnant in moving in the right direction action wise towards our goal. Okay, so let's take a moment to go through a couple of examples. So I'm going to use a couple of goals, not saying that I've heard them before, but we'll just say I've heard them before in culture. Okay, so let's say, for example, someone comes to a coach and says, I want to look like Beyonce. Okay. Someone might say, well, that goal is specific because it's a particular person. But what we mean is that, how is that precise or detailed for you? What piece of it, or what piece of looking like Beyonce is what you want? And also, are you looking to look like Crazy in Love Beyonce? Are you looking to look like Renaissance Beyonce or Cowboy Carter Beyonce? Like, which one are you trying to emulate? And is it height? Is it body size? Is it waist to hip ratio? We need to be more detailed in what it is and what type of goal you're trying to accomplish. And some may laugh at this example, but people really do have goals sometimes that are very broad. And I'm using this exaggerated example in a way so that we can get an idea of how our own goals can be a lot more detailed. Using that same example, is it measurable? What can we use to measure that? There's nothing I can use to measure that if you are not that person, which I highly advise you trying to emulate anyone else's body, because we were all beautifully and wonderfully made uniquely by God. But that's not even measurable. How am I measuring? How can we measure that progress for you? Is it relevant? What does looking like someone else add to your life? What does comparing yourself consistently to someone else, whether it's a celebrity or whether it's someone on social media, what does that add to your life? How is that in line with your values? How does that work for you in the long term? And then let's look at, is it even attainable? it's never going to be attainable for you to look like someone else. So these are things, and also time bound. You're never, it's not enough time in the world for you to look like someone else. So this is how we can test something against a SMART goal or SMART specifications. Let's take another example. For example, someone may say, I want to lose 50 pounds in 6 months. Okay, we already know that that is pretty detailed. You've told me the amount of pounds you want to lose, and you've given me a time frame. Now, is a goal like that measurable? Well, we have pounds, so we have a unit of measurement that we can use and that we can track, and we have time, which is another way to measure. So we can go ahead, and that's something that we can plan around when we use science. Now, is it realistic? Or, excuse me, relevant? So, is it relevant to your life? Now, someone say, okay, losing 50 pounds, of course it could be relevant. It could be, depending on what you're trying to achieve in your life. You want to be here for your kids. You want to have longevity, and maybe the doctor has told you you need to lose that amount of weight or more that would be beneficial for you. Maybe it's so that you can travel with your partner, you can walk, you can do all sorts of different activities. You want to enjoy life more with those that you love. Yes, this is a relevant goal. Maybe it's some health concerns that you have, and or you have some issues with your joints, and 50 pounds can relieve those issues. Now, you could also have someone and they are already close to their maintenance weight, or I'll say a healthy weight for themselves, and then they tell you something like, I want to lose 50 pounds. And that's where we'll question that, because we do have some, it may be a body dysmorphia issue or something like that. So this is where we'll say, okay, is this good for your life? Is this good for your mental and emotional health at this point? And that will tie us into attainable. Is that attainable? Well, it depends. So, one, do you have 50 pounds to lose? Let's take a look at that. So then we can say, is that attainable? Because if you don't have 50 pounds to lose without us going into lean tissue, then no, it is not attainable for you. You may have 50 pounds to lose, yes, but is it attainable based on your ability, on maybe your behavior, your ability to be consistent with movement and with changes in your diet? Is it attainable that way? Maybe there's some health issues and some other things that we work on, and it's attainable, but maybe you can't lose it at the rate of 6 months. So these are some things that we would have to test it against. And then looking at time, is 6 months a reasonable time for 50 pounds, depending on the individual? There's a healthy amount of weight that is advised for someone to lose each week. So, taking that into calculation, is 6 months a good amount of time to lose 50 pounds for that individual? So, these are all ways that you can test your goal. Now that we have taken the time to test our goals, or we will take the time once you're done with this video, take the time to test your goal to make sure that it's smart. Now we want to make sure that we have detailed action steps that are in line with that goal. So, and I will say those action steps need to be daily, and you should write them out, because every day you're either moving closer to your goal or further away from it. I would say there is no neutral place to be at when we're talking about goal achievement. So someone may say, okay, I'm exercising, but if I take a rest day, then it feels like I'm not working towards my goal. Well, yes, you are. You're still working towards your goal, because recovery is needed. There's a such thing as rest. Your body needs that to actually fully progress. So even though it may seem like you're doing nothing, sometimes doing nothing is doing something, if you know what I mean. So we can look at action steps like, did I prepare my meals? Did I say my morning affirmations? Those are part of your action steps. Did I study my word? Whatever you have design that can hit those different areas that you know will help you reach your goal. What does that look like on a daily basis? And kind of writing those out and taking a look at that. And we want to evaluate that and have some check-ins on a weekly or monthly basis, or weekly and monthly basis, where we take a look at the week and say, Okay, how did I do this week in this area or that area? How could I do better at making sure that I'm hitting my daily action steps? And this is kind of the self check or self inventory, but I would also advise kind of having an accountability partner, and we'll dig into that a little bit more in another week. But having someone that you can be honest and vulnerable with and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. And I kind of have these check-ins. And maybe this is somebody you only check in once a month. Or maybe it's you want a little bit more accountability. So it's someone you check in with once a week and say, I need to come to you and have somewhere that I kind of vocally say how I'm doing with these daily tasks and with my goals. Now that you've written out your SMART goal, you have your daily action steps, you've taken a look at, you've charted in for your weekly check-ins or your monthly check-ins. You also want to take a look at what supplies and what resources you may need. So say, for example, your goal is to complete a 5K. Depending on where you are already towards that goal, you might need to find a Couch to 5K program. Maybe you need to find a run group in your area. Maybe you need to find a running coach. Reach out to a friend that you know already runs. So these are some of the things when it comes to supplies and resources that you may need. I need to get a good pair of shoes. Maybe I need to, have my feet evaluated to make sure these shoes work for me. Maybe I need to make sure I have the gear that I need to do this. Maybe I need to work with a coach. I want to gain some lean mass. I want to lose fat. There's certain things that I want to do. Maybe I need to reach out and find a coach that can work with me. This is, again, is an example of supplies or resources that you may need. I need to find a dance class so I can move more, a yoga class. Maybe I need to find some resources, some free resources, because where my finances are right now. Let me find some fun people on YouTube that I can follow and do those workouts. So whatever it is, whatever your goal is, I want you to write out some supplies and resources and things that you may need that's going to help you achieve that. The more we front load and prepare, the better our goal achievement will be. Moving forward into next week, I want you to make sure that you're adhering to the nutrition plan that you selected for yourself. Make sure we're getting in our meal prep. We're hitting the grocery store, getting everything that we need so we can be prepared for this next week. And also making sure that we're ready to go with our daily action steps that are in support of our goals that we have written about and evaluated today. All right, let's go. I'll see you guys next week.